once there was, and once there wasn't. A very, very, very long time ago, before man was creeping upon Midgard, there was a war in the sky. In this time, the mighty Familiar of the Aesir and the Vanir were fighting each other in a battle not comprehensible to the intellect of man. And this battle was ferocious. Brother fought brother and sister fought sister as the blood of the slain was dripping down to the soil of Midgard. But every battle must end. And so, this one did as well. The mighty families came together in a great, great hall to talk about the peace. They came forth, and in the middle of this hall was standing a very, very large cauldron. One by one, did all the members of the both families spit into the cauldron and see there born from this spittle was Kvasir. And Kvasir was the wisest that had ever lived. He was the most creative that had ever lived. He embodied the desire for peace between the gods. And it wasn't long after Kvasir was born that the news of his skills spread throughout all the worlds. And when all the creatures and all the things heard about what Kvasir could do, they all desired his presence. They would ask him all the questions that plagued them. And there wasn't one question that Kvasir did not have a satisfying answer to. And Kvasir was good of heart. So he spent his days walking to all the corners of the 9 worlds, answering all these questions. And everyone loved Kvasir for what he did. He had brought not only peace to the gods, but to the minds of all the beings. As his fame spread, so did spread the desire in the darker hearts of the 9 worlds. Deep down in the dark world of Svartalheim, there were two dwarves by the name of Gjallar and Fjallar. And these 2 dwarves too heard about what Kvasir could do, answering all the questions. And when they heard this, they desired but one thing: to capture this skill and work it into something so magical that all the creatures would forever see that they were indeed the mightiest of the dwarves and the most skilled of craftsmen. So in their dark lair, their dark hearts went to work on a plan. And after some thinking, they come up with a truly vile idea. They send out a message to Kvasir inviting him over to their home for a great, great feast. Yes. And Kvasir, although he was aware of the treacherous nature of the dwarves, accepted this invitation. For he was so good-willing that he even wanted the dwarves to possess understanding. And so it was that Kvasir traveled to Svartalheim to the 2 brothers, Gjallar and Fjallar. And when he stood before the door of their hall and he knocked on it, and the gates opened, it was a step that he would regret for the rest of his life. Kvasir was seated down on a long table, and indeed this table was filled with many riches, with many drinks, with many foods of all kinds. And after Kvasir had eaten bread and drunken the wine that the dwarves had offered him, Fjalar sat across him on the table and asked him the following question. "O wise Kvasir, can you answer me this question? Which wise was? Which wise was?" A riddle. Which wise was? Kvasir had to think about this. And as he took another sip of his wine, he stopped. He dropped his cup to the ground. His eyes became as wide as millstones. And before he had any chance to run away or to scream for help, the beer brother Fjalar struck him down in his neck, and his blood was gushing forth from his wound over the long table. And as soon as they saw that the blood was coming out of his body, the two dwarves gathered up 3 great vats, and they gathered the blood inside of it. Later they added honey, and thus they had made the mead of poetry. And in this mead was contained the essence of Kvasir's skill. All his creativity, wisdom, imagination, and far-sightedness was captivated in this magical brew. And the dwarves were pretty pleased with themselves. They possessed one of the mightiest drinks in all of the 9 worlds. But when a heart has been tainted by the blood of another, it can never, ever forget the taste. So too the hearts of the dwarves desired only one thing more than to drink from their mead, and it was to have more hate, more violence. Because just like a bog, a dark heart demands sacrifice. And so they went out looking for a new victim. And they found an innocent giantess sitting on a cliff, watching the seas. And Fjalar bade his brother Fjalar to take a millstone and drop it upon her head. And just as he was about to drop the millstone, an unexpected hand grabbed him in the neck. It was the giant Sutu. He grabbed the 2 brothers and he threatened to throw them off a cliff. So now it was the 2 dwarves' turn to beg for their lives, and beg they did. They begged for it with everything they had. But nothing could sway Sutu not to throw them off the cliff. So when they were hanging above the roaring sea waters, Fjalar yelled out, "But we have the mead of poetry! You can have it if you spare us!" And this made Sutu listen. Because if he would have the mead of poetry in his own possession, he would be the mightiest giant of all. So he accepted this offer. He would trade the lives of the dwarves in order to make himself the wisest giant that ever was. So said, so done. Sutu loaded the 3 big vats with the mead of poetry on his wagon and drove them home. But he knew that he had to protect this precious brew, for many creatures in the 9 worlds desired it. He called to him his beautiful, wonderful daughter Gunla. And he said to Gunlad, Gunlad, you must go to one of the deepest caverns of the biggest mountains in Jotunheim, and there you shall protect my precious treasure. You shall sit there and you shall play the harp alone, watching over my precious mead. And no one except for me is allowed to take even one tiny drop of it. Father, I do not wish to sit alone for eternity, guarding your treasure. But I cannot deny your wishes, so I must go, and I shall go. And so said, so done. Gunlad took the 3 BFHAOS. His father opened a great cavern inside the biggest mountain in Jotunheim. He ushered his daughter to go in. He closed the mountain. And there she sits, all alone, only accompanied by the tunes of a lyre, playing softly away her solitude and grief. Is this the end? Is this where it stops? No. No. In the meantime, while this all had come to be, there was one who had watched everything from his great throne back in Asgard. It was the Allfather. Odin had seen everything that had come to pass, and he had waited for the time to be right. Because as he desired knowledge beyond anything else, he needed to have this meat of poetry in his own possession. And he had felt that the time now was right. He disguised himself in the form of an old wanderer, an old greybeard, and he called himself Bolverk. And he traveled to Jotunheim, where he knew that the brother of Suttung had a big farm. And when he came to the farm, he saw that there were 9 farmers working on the land. And these 9 farmers were working with their scythes, harvesting the crops. He approached these working men, and he called out to them, "Hard workers! Hear me now, I carry with me a whetstone, so special that it will make your scythes sharper than they have ever been, and they will cut through your harvest and crops 4, 5, 6, no 9 times faster than any of them have done before." The farmers did not believe a word of what the old man said. But when Odin asked one of the farmers for his scythe, and he sharpened it with his stone, and he began to cut the crops, they saw that indeed it was done 9 times faster than any of their scythes had done it before. So naturally, they asked Bolverk if they could buy the stone. Now, Bolverk said, "No, you cannot buy the stone. You cannot buy it. It's not for sale. But fair is fair. You're a hard-working man. You know what? You can decide who can have the stone." And with those words, he threw the whetstone in the air. It went high in the air. And the farmers looked up, and as the stone came down on the ground, there was one silent pause, one heartbeat. And then the eyes of the farmers turned to fury, and before you knew it, they had slaughtered each other to the last man, and they were laying on the ground in their own blood, with the whetstone between them. Odin stepped over the bodies, grabbed his whetstone, put it in his pocket, and went to the big farm and knocked on the door. Opened it the brother of Suk. And Odin said to him, "My name is Boza, and I need your help. I require for myself one sip of that mead of poetry that everyone's been talking about. And I heard that you know where it is. I thought that you might be able to help me to acquire it." And the brother looks at Odin and he says, "Oh yes, I might know where it is, but what makes me want to give that secret to you, strange old man?" And Odin said, "You know what? I think you might be in need of some assistance on your farm." And the giant goes, "No, of course not. I have 9 hard-working men." And Odin turns around his head, looks at the slaughtered remains of the 9 farmers and says, "Really? Do you? Because besides the crops for the giant, I only see the food of ravens laying on your field." The giant cannot believe his eyes. His own men lay there slaughtered in the puddle of their own remains. And Odin says to him as he is staring at his dead farmers in confusion, "You know what? If I do the work of 9 men in 1 season, will you help me acquire what I wish?" And the brother goes, "All right, you leave me no choice, stranger. So, if you can accomplish the work of 9 men in 1 season, I will help you get a taste of that meat that my brother holds so dearly." And so said, so done. Odin sets about working the work of 9 men in 1 season, and he works, and he sights, and he cuts. And yes, after 1 season of non-stop working and barely any sleep, it is done. He goes to the giant and asks the giant to fulfill his promise to help him acquire the mead of poetry. The giant stubbornly gives in. He says, all right, stranger, follow me." And together they walk to the high mountain in which Gunnlod is still playing her harp, making soft sounds of solitude in the depths of that cavern. The giant knocks on the mountain to see where it is hollow. And when he found the right place, he started to drill with a very, very long drill. And he drills, and he drills, and he drills, and he keeps drilling, and he keeps drilling. He looks inside the hole, and he says to Odin, "Yes, it is done. You can now go through." Odin goes to the hole, he blows in it, and then a lot of dust and pieces of stone blow back into his face. And that means that the hole has not yet been finished. So the giant tried to deceive him. Odin says, "You are trying to get out of your part of the bargain. I bet you, giant, keep on drilling." And so the giant grudgingly drills again, and he drills, and he drills, and he drills. This time, when he says that the work is finished, Odin blows through the hole, and the wind goes straight through. The work is done. Odin changes himself in the appearance of a snake, and he slithers in the hole, and the giant still tries to stab after him, knowing full well that he has been deceived at every opportunity that Bolwerk had seen, but he misses him. And slowly, Odin is making his way to where Gunnlod plays. And when he sees in the distance the light of a fire, he knows that that is where Gunnlod must be playing. He enters the caverns, and he transforms himself into a beautiful, beautiful, handsome young man. He approaches Gunnlod, who is stunned. She's been sitting there for she cannot even remember. And here, look at that. Is it real? Can it be true? This most amazing creature, more beautiful than any she has ever seen, is here to break her solitude.
falls in love. Odin strokes her cheek and says, "Here, girl, I'm here, I'm here. Oh, you must be so lonely." And Gunnar said, "Yes, I'm so lonely, I'm so lonely, I'm so happy you are here." And Odin says, so am I, child, so am I. But I must ask you, what is in those 3 large vats that are behind you? Gunnar looks around and she says, "Oh, that is a very special drink from my father, and I must protect it. You cannot ask me about it anymore." Odin says, "I am very thirsty from my travel into the mountain. Could I please have but one sip?" And she says, "No, my father will be mad beyond any account. I cannot let you do it." And Odin says, "This is what I offer you. 3 nights, I will be yours. 3 nights, we will be one. And for each night, I get 1 sip from each barrel. Just 1 sip. Your father will never notice it. You will be released from your solitude, and all will be well." Gunnar turns red. She looks at the barrels. She looks at her lyra. She looks at the handsome young man. She gives in. She gives in. And so, 3 nights the two spend together. 3 nights they are one. 3 nights they enjoy each other's bodies. 3 nights. And on the breaking of the 3rd dawn, Odin says to Gunnar, "Now it is time to fulfill your end of the bargain. I will have 3 sips from each and every vow." Gunnar says, "All right, I promise. But nothing more. Nothing more. Just 3 sips." Odin walks to the first vow. He picks it up, and in 1 big drink, he empties it completely. He goes to the 2nd vial. He picks it up and empties it with 1 sip. And he goes to the 3rd vial, and with 1 sip he empties that as well. And before Gunnar has even time to cry out in pain and in suffering, for she knows she has been deceived, Odin has already transformed himself in a large eagle. He flies to the top of the cavern, breaks open the mountain, and speeds off with his belly filled with the meat of poetry. And he flies as fast as he can back to the walls of Asgard, to safety, where the gods are waiting for him. But in the distance, Suttung had seen an eagle break out of the mountain, and he knew what had happened. He knew exactly what was going on. He too transformed himself into a large bird of prey, and he started to fly after Odin as fast as he could, and a race ensued. And for some time it seemed that Odin was up front, and then Suttung came really close, and they dived and they flew, and there in the distance the walls of Asgard started to appear, and they grew ever bigger and greater, and the gods were standing on the walls waiting with a very, 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 very large cauldron. And when Odin was close, he let himself fall, and with 1 big burp, he emptied the complete batch of meat of poetry into the cauldron. Suttung could not enter behind the walls of Asgard, so he knew that he had lost his prize, and he returned. And what then happened to Gunnar, no one knows. All we know is that we know nothing about her anymore, for there was nothing to be heard of her. gods had now possession of the mead of poetry. But as Odin had spilled all the mead into the big cauldron, 9 drops in his haste had missed, and they had fallen down to earth, to Midgard. And from these 9 drops, man gets the basis for his inspiration. From these 9 drops, all mediocre musicians are born. From these 9 drops, all mediocre poets are created. But for those who truly wish to follow ambition and to become the greatest of the greatest and have their names echoed down in history, they must ask Odin himself for a sip of his precious mead. And for those that do, glory awaits. And thus, the mead of poetry is brought forth out of the death of Kvasir. So think, the next time you write, you sing, you talk, you compose, ask Odin. Know that knowledge, know that creativity and inspiration demand sacrifice. Feed the raven. Feed your soul. And the gods will grant you from their precious drink. Hear my advice. Hear it. We are as the gods. And the gods wish they were as us. Be wise. Be wise.